Alrighty, very cool. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to the March Public Media Innovators webinar. Thank you for joining us on this March Madness holiday, which is also a work day, apparently. I didn't realize that when we booked this webinar, that it was the first Thursday of the tournament. Go Heels, go Blue, for all of you that are out there. I want to thank everyone for taking some time out of their day to join us. We have a fun little icebreaker here. Introduce yourself or describe your current mood in 3 emojis, please, as we get settled. And I will start. And that is a sheep or a ram for UNC. And that's what the Michigan people do for the Michigan emoji. And I'm all about. So that's me for today. And feel free to put your own emojis in there, if you will. Although I did it to host and panelists, and I need to do it to everyone. So hold on. Watch me. There it is, to everyone. Cool. Thank you. Okay. Get after it. This is the Public Media Innovators webinar. For those of you that have not joined us before, thank you for joining us. For those of you that have been here before, welcome back. Thank you to NITA for sponsoring this group, this PLC, and thank you to my co-chairs of this PLC, Amber Samdahl from Wisconsin and Chad Davis from Nebraska. Chad is not with us today. He's traveling, but we've got Amber here, and just want to thank you all for joining us. Amber's going to be monitoring the chat, and if you've got questions throughout, please throw them in there. We'd love to hear from you. Love to try to address questions in real time as much as we can. And don't feel like you need to save it for the end at any point. Make sure that you're hitting the chat for everyone, though. Sometimes you have to select that, not just host and panelists, but hit the drop down for everyone, just like you're doing with the emojis right now. So awesome. Thank you. Okay, today's webinar is all about South by Southwest, some takeaways, specifically some takeaways from the EDU portion of South by Southwest. And a couple of disclaimers first. Last year, Chad and Amber and Mikey and some others from the HQ, we got to go to South by Southwest. It was awesome. And we did a similar sort of takeaway panel. And some feedback that we got was that it sounded like we were talking about a party that was so cool and that you weren't invited to yourself. That's not the vibe we were going for. That's not what we wanted at all. We really just wanted to share everything we learned. There's just so much that's going on that we were excited about and want to share with you all. And we're going to try to do the same this year, but with a focus on the EDU side of things that happened before interactive. But as you'll be able to see, there's some things that sort of cross over between EDU and interactive. This is not a commercial for South by Southwest or South by Southwest EDU at all. They are not a sponsor of this, but they are agreeing to be a part of it. Thank you to Greg Rosenbaum, who is the VP of EDU portion, the EDU track at South by Southwest. So we're going to hear from him first. And then we're going to hear from 2 folks from different stations that were there presenting. There was like a bunch of different PBS related content that happened at EDU and then at Interactive. So we'll hear from Lauren McDowell Pyle from PBS North Carolina, right next door to me and one office over. And we'll hear from Rosemary Miller at PBS SoCal to talk about her experience and what that session was like that she co-presented on with some other folks from CPB and PBS stations. So that's the ground rules for today. That's what we're going to be talking about. As again, please feel free to use the chat. I will try to update everyone on scores from the Creighton-Louisville game throughout. So if you're interested in that, I'll let you know when we hit halftime of that game. But for now, let's just jump right in. And I guess first up is Greg. So Greg, thank you so much for joining us. Greg is based in Austin, Texas, where he oversees the EDU track of South by Southwest. I guess Lauren and Rosemary, you guys can go dark for a little bit and I'll call on you when you come in. Cool. Thank you. Awesome. So Greg, I know you prepared a deck a little bit. Pull that up. Feel free to share your screen and we can sort of go through some of those. Unless you want me to drive it or you get to do it?
First of all, hi. It's great to be
Yeah.
here with the public media crew. I was super excited when David reached out to have the conversation with y'all, and happy to talk more about it. David, I'm happy to follow your lead. I can pull it up if you want, or if you have it pulled up, that's fine too. I can chat through it.
Okay, let me see. I was going to introduce you as well, ask you to do so. Let me see.
Let me see if this works. Are y'all seeing
Yeah,
it?
perfect. Yeah, I think it's better if you'll do it on your end, I think.
Do you still see the slideshow or no?
It's still in like presenter mode or something.
Okay. Let me.
I'll try to. Hold on.
Here, we can do it. Just give me 1 sec.
Okay, while you're doing that, see if you can tell us about yourself for a second while you're multitasking.
I love this. Okay, let's see if I do.
Whoa, there we go.
Can you see the whole?
I see inside your brain right now. It's a little scary.
Okay, we won't do a full slideshow presentation, but we'll do it in here.
Okay. Well, it's only a couple slides, so whichever way works best for you.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So yeah, you'll get it this way. So anyways, I'm Greg Rosenbaum. I joined South by Southwest in 2010 to help launch South by Southwest EDU. At the time, the conference was, or the festival was 3 parts. It was music, a festival that started in 1987. With the advent of the CD-ROM in 1994, they had started a music festival and a film and TV festival. It was sort of multimedia and expanded into those two pieces in interactive technology, film and TV, and music. And then they saw a lot of change and innovation happening in education and launched South by Southwest EDU. And I can tell y'all a little bit more about the history, sort of what how we got to this point. As it's been our 15th anniversary this year, we've done a lot of looking back to look forward, which I think will help inform maybe some of the perspective and takeaways. And to David's point, the goal is to just give you all some high-level takeaways from the experience, as opposed to an overt commercial about what you missed. But
speaking of commercial, show the sizzle commercial thing, because I think it's a good sort of appetizer for what the feel and the vibe was like. So I know that you prepared, or your next slide is like a very short 1-minute sort of sizzle reel a little bit. And I asked Greg if he wouldn't mind sharing this. So again, we're sensitive not to feel like we are pushing any sort of like registration's open for next year. But anyway, it's just a good overall sort of takeaway of what the experience might be like. So yeah, play that for folks if you don't mind, and then we can jump into a little bit more of the sessions.
Cool. Education to me means way more than just reading something out of a book and memorizing it. It means truly grasping the knowledge of whatever you're passionate about.
Welcome to South by Southwest EDU 2025.
I love coming to South by Southwest EDU because we get to meet new people.
You get to learn from one another.
Having conversations, entering into understanding new ideas, and making connections and collaborations across like time and space is a really unique opportunity.
The way to make change in education is when all of these parties, all of these multiple perspectives come together.
You need that kind of gathering of dynamic, thinkers and leaders from different fields to reimagine what can be done better in this constantly disrupted space.
There's nothing like being in the present, being in the space of people who want to learn.
Schools can transform not just their communities, but society at large.
The quest to become educated is something that humans have sort of a deep-seated desire. Change is possible when we become educated.
The value of education, especially now, cannot be understated. The more good people that we can get into education, the better.
As educators, as hard as the struggle is with what we do, we are making a difference.
We often discredit how impactful librarians are, how impactful teachers are. I always tell them, at some point in their career, they're going to go out of their library, and a library kid or a former library kid is going to see them. They're going to say, thank you for helping me find the book with the blue cover. Thank you for introducing me to graphic novels and comic books. Thank you for helping me get a library card. And most importantly, thank you for helping me stay alone.
Learning has the potential to change the entire future of humanity.
Very cool. Thank you. Greg, as I was watching that, and I'd seen it before during the session, during your takeaway session that you did at Interactive, I'm wondering if you can speak for a second about how the themes seem to cross over a little bit from interactive to education. And it almost seems like a lot of the sessions could have been pitched to either one, I mean, in terms of like ed tech or AI and use cases in schools and government and stuff. How do you decide what themes you're going to be sort of looking for as you're curating the EDU sessions, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, and we've done this for years. I think one of the things that makes South by Southwest and South by Southwest EDU somewhat distinct in the space is this idea of being really a reflection of what's going on in the community and a community-fueled experience. I think one of the biggest trends we've seen over the 15 years we've been producing South by Southwest EDU as an extension of the rest of South by is that there is a lot of convergence in what's going on in this space. That South by Southwest is a convergence of the creative industries and technology and artificial intelligence and all the things that are happening in gaming and entertainment, and that those are all reflections of where those overlaps are. But if you look at what's changing and evolving in education, a lot of those same through lines are there, and a lot of the hot takes speak to where technology is with artificial intelligence, where gaming and learning is, where a lot of the other sort of emerging technological trends are. But we really look to the community to do a lot of the programming. We use a resource called Panel Picker, which is how the community can propose ideas, which is how some of the colleagues that we'll hear from in a little bit participated on the program. And what's unique about it is we get a ton of submissions during the application process, but then we actually get community input in as well. And so that helps frame it up. But the four themes that kind of set the stage, and to think about last summer feels like forever ago for EDU, but we thought about four things: belong, invest, transcend, and energize as sort of overarching themes for how we were programming the education portion of South by Southwest. And I feel like there's a lot of through lines of those pieces to what happened at South by as well.
Oh, cool. And then that's the presenter side of it. What about the attendee side of it? What are some trends that you've seen in terms of who shows up for this?
Yeah, so I can keep sharing my screen, David, or I can take it off. You tell me.
Yeah, I think you can leave it on. People don't need to see me. That's very
cool. Yeah, so you'll see here, this talks a little bit about that evolution. I think what we had seen when we started the education portion is that while there are many really high value places, often run by associations for specific parts of the education community, specific stakeholders to convene, that there's not a lot of opportunities for people to convene across stakeholder groups. So like there might be a great high school principals conference, but they don't often get the opportunity to be in community with folks from higher education or early learning or career and workforce development, or that the technology startup and investment community doesn't often get a chance to be face-to-face with folks that are in the classroom and actually implementing a lot of the things that they're developing for students. And so the design has always been to create this collective community across all learning life cycles that represents educators and administrators, startups, business and industry and investment, a big portion of nonprofit, and philanthropy, student perspectives. And I think in many ways that's sort of a symbiotic relationship with a lot of the work that the public media stakeholders here do, is that it's about uniting community across various lines to help speak to what's impacting people on a daily basis, whether that be learners or parents or families or community spaces. And so that really has come through in who attends the event, and then also what the programming reflects. That learning can happen in a children's museum, it can happen through public media, it can happen in traditional learning environments as well. And that's how the event has grown from a few hundred people in Texas to, like 10,000 folks from over 40 countries over the last 15 years.
Yeah, that's amazing to see the growth of it. And it's also cool to hear that there's something for folks in informal education as well as formal education, and that it's a very soft line between those two sometimes, and people go back and forth. And I know that we do in public media. Sometimes we partner with our local education agencies. Sometimes we just do things in the community. But every station and all the folks that are represented on this call are either in education or adjacent to education, which is why we really wanted to center this conversation about some of the themes and things and the big takeaways from the EDU side of things. So thanks for setting that up. Let's jump right to your perspectives and takes, I guess, the next slide. Thank you for putting this together. So just to set it up for a second, I met Greg at Interactive when he hosted a panel about biggest takeaways from South by EDU. And it was sort of a joke in the room that people thought they could walk into that 1 hour session and get everything that happened at EDU in 1 hour, which we got a taste. I don't think we got all of it, but we got a piece of it for sure. And there's no way to capture a full 3 or 4 days of programming in one session. But thankfully, Greg summed it up in these as like main takeaways. And just to give you a little preview, we're also going to share next a list of some sessions that he thinks speak to each of these themes. And all of this stuff is going to be available. Amber put it in the chat on the resource page of this PLC. So you could take a screenshot if you'd like to. Like a big thing at South by, everyone was constantly like waving their phones in front and taking pictures of monitors and stuff. So feel free to take a picture if you'd like, or a screenshot, but also just know that we're going to share all of this stuff later, both the recording here, the deck, and then the resources and some other playlists that we've curated from the sessions. So thanks, Amber. So Greg, walk us through, tell us everything we missed at EDU. And I guess you had an hour at Interactive. You've got 15 minutes now.
Well, thanks, David. And credit where credit is due to, the way the event, and as y'all probably know from running lots of different content pieces, is like you don't necessarily get to experience the event the way people participating do. And so the way that we translated some of the big takeaways and perspectives from South by Southwest EDU this year was with a group of leaders that represented different communities within education. And so Amani Wilson, who leads strategy and innovation for a music education organization, spoke to some of these takeaways. We had someone from higher education from the Stanford D School speaking, and then we had Sam Seidel, and then Mike Wong spoke, who has bounced around higher ed, but is now in a venture fund called Long Journey Ventures. And so I think what's cool about this is you're getting different sort of stakeholders' takes on what's happening in learning, and I'll rock through all these and give some of the context. And again, as David said, the next slide I think points to some of the sessions that specifically spoke to those 3 individuals in terms of the takeaways at the event. But the overarching themes are, there's like this human component to everything that's going on, and while it's not here, I think it's like important to acknowledge that we are in a time and a moment of change here in the U.S. and worldwide, and there's a lot of policy things going on in education, and I think what was great to see is that there seemed to be an overarching theme of like working together, coming together, being bold, figuring out solutions, and really figuring out how to chart a path forward. But the way that folks kind of came to these, and I'll rock through them, is through various perspectives. And so I think one of the big takeaways, especially as we think about the way that AI is impacting learning, is that this notion of vibes matter, that like the experiential piece and the culture of learning is as important, if not more important. Like one of the hot takes was that we're going to move away from teaching to the curriculum and actually start moving towards the goal of a classroom setting is to empower and motivate student motivation, and that the learning piece of it is a result of the culture that's built around it, and that's what we're fostering in education now as sort of knowledge becomes a little bit more accessible or more immediate with access to a lot of different artificial intelligence and other sort of technology platforms.
Do you think, Greg, that's like the vibes thing? And that was like, I heard that word so much and I felt it so much when we were down there. Do you think that's like the idea that vibes matter? Do you think that's a generational, it doesn't have to be either or, but is it generation, or is it just now we realize that that's really what's important? Or is it is it both? I'm curious what you think about that.
Yeah, it's a good question, David. I think I've been putting everything this season through this year of like this 15 years filter, and that the notion of vibes matter, I think, is like a reflection of learning culture in a moment when we are very attached to the technology in our life, the physical devices, the portal that it gives us to the rest of the world. But, if you look back 5, 10, 15 years ago at the program, we'd be talking about Vibes Matter from a classroom environment standpoint, that the actual learning design of the room, the interaction with a smart whiteboard, the portal into other learning environments as a community in a classroom mattered as a physical human experience. And now it's just being translated to like, okay, as we're developing things that become more of a one on technology, like individual interacting with technology piece, how are we supporting the attributes of a learning environment that are human and, essential to cultivating some of those human intelligence skills that we want to see in individuals.
Cool. Yeah, that's sort of what I get as well, is that it's been building up to this over time, and that it's just looking at it through a slightly different perspective. But yeah, it definitely matters, I think. And I do think it's informed a lot by this generation's sort of feelings about trying to capture the mood, the moment, like what's important in ways that may have not been as obvious in the past. Okay, cool. Thanks. Keep going. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and I think that also speaks to some of the next couple sort of takeaways in terms of where folks were. Like, I think Mike maybe self-quoted himself with this idea of self-awareness and spirituality being a learning opportunity, but the idea of your second brain and the humanistic piece of it is sort of an important part to be fostering as well. And the take right above that, this idea that assessment will look drastically different. I think the quote was actually like, assessment is dead and is completely changing. And it's not necessarily saying that, testing is out the window, but that there are opportunities now with one-on-one tutoring, with embedded assessment, with more individual interaction that can track knowledge development in individual learners, that we don't necessarily need a traditional testing environment to really cultivate that level of assessment. I will say on this one though, it's been interesting because I went back to like some of our trends from 2018, and it was some of the same talking points, and we've gone through iterations of in higher education going to test optional with the SAT and the ACT in colleges. Yeah. We've seen even the earliest years pushback on assessment being really big when the STAR test came out in Texas for K-12. So this evolution of assessment, but the need for it, I think, continues to be a big piece. And then the other sort of hot take on that was that because knowledge or intelligence is easily accessible through a lot of these technologies, that maybe one of the most central human pieces that we need is grit, that the human experience will be a choice, and that we actually need to be cultivating grit in individuals versus knowledge acquisition. So there's some connective tissue between all these different points about where technology intersects with learning. I think the next sort of like bucket of this, again, I think still sort of speaking to that human piece in learning, is our opening keynote. Anne Laure Lecomte, who's a neuroscientist, actually launched a book the week of EDU called Tiny Experiments, which I think is a really great sort of concept in general, the fluidity of just being able to experiment in action, that there's this idea of reflection in action. And that we have grown as a society, like I think she sort of framed it as, what if we lived in a world where the opening question when you meet someone is like, what are your latest failures? And that we just normalize this idea of failing forward. And this idea of like supporting failure also was connected to another speaker we had, Manu Kapoor, who's a researcher and a professor who has this whole theory around productive failure. And in education right now, that the application of that has been really seen in math education. Like there's a big focus on why math education is falling behind. There's a big investment in that. But this notion of cultivating a sense of curiosity versus the definedness of certainty, I think was, again, like another great overarching theme. And it came from that keynote, I think, the curiosity over certainty piece. But as I said at the opening, the idea of sort of like where we're at now and how we're navigating through the current moment, this idea of embracing curiosity and opportunity and finding collective organization, as things are changing, is always sort of like a through line at the event, where it's all about, creating community and connection.
There was, I want to just
Yeah.
try to make a connection real quick to the interactive from there, because one of the sessions from interactive, and this is a preview of maybe we'll have this guest as this author as a guest, or this speaker as a guest in a future webinar here. Her name is Maggie Jackson. She did a session about uncertainty, and the whole theme there is that uncertainty is wisdom in motion. And we just loved, Chad and I were both in that session. That's one of the highlights. We'll share that. There's only audio to that one. That one wasn't filmed. So Amber has curated a list on our resource page of some of these sessions, including that one. Thank you, Amber. And it was so great. It was so that could have easily been at EDU. And so what I'm trying to establish is that like the theme of curiosity over certainty was a one-to-one comparison to a session about like uncertainty that happened at EDU, which was embrace uncertainty, ask the questions, like own the fact that you may not know everything, and that through that discovery, you will learn more. So it was just such a cool session to sit through. And if you have time, it's kind of like a podcast kind of thing. You could just listen to it. I encourage you all to listen to that or buy that book, if you will, by Maggie Jackson. Is so good. One of the things I also want to get to, Greg, while you're talking about all these things. So on your list, it seems, I haven't done the numbers, like 1, 2, I don't know, roughly half of them seem to be these like soft skills, vibe, self-awareness, curiosity, human experience, connecting with others. I mean, we all know that's vitally important. And the other half are more like, are we going to inhabit other planets? What does AI look like? And one of the things that I loved about South by is that, like, yes, you can like see tech and you could see it in motion, EdTech or FinTech or health tech or whatever it is. Some of the interactives were really cool too. But then also just being exposed and like walking into a session where you're like, I don't really know what this is about, but this is a good speaker. They've been vetted. They've been sort of picked by a panel of peers or something. So I'm sure they have something good to say. And just getting exposed to a lot of those types of conversations that you wouldn't otherwise be, necessarily in the room for or think about. And one of them, I just want to jump to the end. I didn't go to the session about interplanetary stuff, but like, what was the takeaway there? Like, why did that one make your list? It's such like a outlier from the other ones. I'm curious, like, what the point of that session was and what people were talking about afterwards.
Yeah, it's a great call, and I think we've been talking for years. NASA is always a big participant at the event, both at Interactive and EDU, and I think this notion of space in general has been a big motivator for education and learning for 50, 60 years, and I think now this session was a part performance, part speech, part scholarly work aligned to the future. It's called The Last of the Terrestrials, and honestly, it's one of those things that you like just need to listen to and experience. And the beauty of programming an event like South by Southwest, some stuff comes in as we've been doing this panel picker stuff, and then some things come in very last minute and kind of arise and come part of that conversation. But to your point about the experience there, I think there's a goal of grounding these big concepts about the future into the reality of today, and then creating this sense of our own ability to be part of a future forward but problem solving sort of agent in real time. And this question of or acknowledging that the students in our classrooms now, I have kids right now that are 2 and 4 and like can kind of appreciate this, are the ones that will potentially be inhabiting other planets or make the journey to Mars. And what does that mean in terms of skills that they need to develop? How do they need to grow and evolve? Is it the soft skills? Is it the knowledge? What are the fundamental skills to sort of that future? But yes, I think the experiential pieces, that's like a thought exercise. And in 2 minutes could not really do it justice. So I would definitely encourage you to go back and listen to that as well.
Yeah, that was so great. I think that another takeaway that I just want to highlight, and I'm trying to find the quote that I did here, was this idea about AI was everywhere. AI was everywhere last year as well, but this year it seemed to take a little bit of a different there was a little bit of a different take on it, in that we have kind of like going through the looking glass a little bit on AI and coming out the other end realizing that it may not be everything that we always thought it would be, and that there may be some dangers on there. And so one theme that I saw a lot was not just artificial intelligence, but what they were always talking about was human intelligence. So I'm just going to read this quote that was shared during your session. So remind me, this was from someone at the Aspen Institute, Dan Porterfield, who said, in an AI-shaped future, the name of the game in education will be to develop and deepen a student's HI, human intelligence, for striving, collaborating, adapting, and connecting. So I think that was from your session that you quoted or something. So yeah, so thank you for flagging that. And just that sat with me a lot. And I think that helped inform a lot of the other sessions that I was going through that all spoke about AI, but through a lens of HI, human intelligence. Was that something that you noticed come up a lot in other sessions about using AI to empower us, not just as a crutch per se? And I'm wondering if you had any other sessions or thoughts like that.
Yeah, no, I love that call out. And Dan Porterfield, who now runs the Aspen Institute, used to be a college president at Franklin and Marshall. And he actually spoke 10 years ago about the future of the liberal arts degree and how there is an essential skill there. So there's some like connection a decade later that he's still focused on human intelligence. And it was in an interview with the outgoing CFO of Teach for America, Alyssa Villanueva Beard, who leads this organization that cultivates a lot of the educators currently in classrooms and in the future who kind of help influence education long term. And some of the reflections were just how challenging it is to be a teacher right now, and that there's a human experience and what it was like for her to lead that organization. But the lens of human intelligence, I think, is really true. Again, as I went back through some of these old trends, some of it was like, what is the future of work now that we're in artificial intelligence? And there was a lot of, I think, concern or fears 5 or 10 years ago that is technology going to replace the teacher in the classroom? And I think what we've seen with a lot of the content at this year's event, both at South by and at EDU, is it's that there are aspects to those roles that are challenging or hard or time consuming that can be improved, but the actual human experience in the classroom is probably the most important or most fundamental piece of learning at all levels of learning in institutions, in higher education, in K-12. And that a lot of the content that even wasn't specifically designed for AI was talking about how do you create systems of change around that, how do you do leadership around that, how do you support communities around that. And so I think that the through line of human intelligence is almost a bigger overarching theme than just where it sits with artificial intelligence as well.
That's great. Yeah, and I kept on seeing that pop up in references to sessions at EDU as well as at Interactive. I'm trying to be aware of time here, and I want to make sure we get to our other two panelists. So if you don't mind just, Greg, advancing to your next slide so people can see that for a second. Yeah, awesome. So Greg has prepared a short list of, it's hard to pick, favorites, but these are like highlights, I should say. Some of the highlights from EDU, which we are sharing this list with links, and Amber's curated a playlist as well for the videos, and then just a regular doc with the audio that you can go back and watch some of these if you're interested in learning a little bit more about how some of the specific sessions that address the topics that Greg has addressed earlier. So thank you, Amber, for prepping that and always dropping it into the chat on cue. So I encourage you all just to put this on. They're fascinating. You're going to learn. And then the next slide, if you will, Greg was kind enough to give a shout out to the spectrum of the full spectrum of public media as they were represented at EDU. So we're going to hear from two folks who presented on the first one, the Boosting Family Engagement. But looks like there were 5 sessions that were featured content on public media or by public media members. Greg, what's the connection? How much love does EDU have for PBS and NPR and public media? Bring it.
I would say so much love. In fact, I think if I were to leave you with anything, it's a an opportunity or an encouragement to consider participating in future years in this panel picker process that will launch this summer. But notably, I went through this and I was like, we'll hear about family engagement in a second, but the podcasting was really focused on student voice and connection to students and community, and how student podcasting is going with NPR and PBS and the Bell. The third thing, the Run, Hide, Fight, was actually a student-produced film with PBS Student Reporting Labs. And then the other two ones were one a library session with Michael Threets, and the other one was about neurodivergence in kids media, both of which Sarah DeWitt moderated both those conversations, so representation in media and whatnot. But the fact that you all translate a lot of what happens for a lot of families like my family is super important, and we want to see that continue to be featured as part of this informal connected learning space at South by Southwest.
That's great. I hope so. And while we're previewing next year, I wonder, since we've got you on this, I know that there's been some mention about the convention center getting rebuilt. What are things looking like, going to be like for EDU next year? Is it still going to be a track before interactive? Is it still going to be 2 or 3 days? Or do you have any heads up about what next year's sessions might look like? Or not sessions, but I guess conference.
Yeah, the experience. Yeah, the Austin Convention Center has been a mainstay of our festival for EDU and South by Southwest for decades, and we won't have it back until 2029. We'll very much be in Austin, Texas. We use a lot of the downtown surrounding environments, and we want to do more to kind of connect the event to what's going on in Austin, and I think that'll be seen both at EDU and South by Southwest. One of the things that we've done for years is building this stronger connection between South by and the learning world at EDU with this crossover day, which is that Thursday. And this panel that we did that David saw was part of that effort to kind of extend education into South by as well. So next year, one of the unique things is that EDU will run through Thursday, March 12th. And March 12th is when not just conference, but film and TV and music all start. So there's actually going to be a date overlap for all 4 verticals at South by Southwest, which is the first time that's ever happened. So I think a stronger connection between the learning world and what's happening in the rest of South by Southwest and the creative industries will be hopefully seen and come to fruition in 2026.
Have you all released, I know for interactive, they lowered the price of some of the different types of badges for next year. Have you all followed suit in that as well, or are you holding off for the same price as it was this year?
I don't know that final prices have been set. I mean, I think the pre-sale price is what's listed right now.
Right.
Yeah, and I think some of that is a reflection of access change and some of the date changes that are going on for South by Southwest, which will run from March 12th through the 18th, and all film and TV, music, and conference will all be happening at the same time. But yes, I mean, I think we're trying to create a stronger engagement and connection and are sort of following suit, though EDU is sort of a standalone event with a standalone credential, and then the other 3 events roll up into a platinum experience.
Cool. Well, for those of you that are listening in on this call, if you have access to professional development dollars or something, I would just encourage you to take a look at this event. There's so much opportunity to learn and grow, and then maybe you could even present, so through the panel picker is such a great thing. Okay, I think that is going to be it for now. I think you did a great job trying to capture the essence of EDU. I know we didn't even have the full hour like you did at Interactive, but thank you, Greg, for consolidating some of these notes, for surfacing some cool sessions, and I'm excited for everyone to take a look at them and listen and watch on their own. And hopefully you all can just go and explore through the South by app some other sessions that look interesting to you as well. There's a huge playlist. There's about materials and sessions that you can listen to and watch. And it's just a lot of fun for folks to sort of like go and explore and find something that's interesting to them. So Greg, what a pleasure. Thank you for joining us. Thanks for taking time out of your day. Thanks for explaining some of these highlights. And thanks for having such a great relationship with public media over the years. We appreciate you guys supporting us and giving us a chance to be a part of this.
Well, thanks so much, David, and thanks so much to everyone for being here. My door is always open. I'll drop my contact information in chat, and I'll hang out for the rest of the time. So thanks so much.
Cool. Thanks, Greg. Okay. Creighton is crushing Louisville, everybody. I know I told you. High Point's down 10 to Purdue at the half. Creighton's crushing Louisville. So there's that. All right. For the rest of this session, we're going to talk to two folks, Lauren and Rosemary. And yeah, let's just all stay on at the same time, right? I was going to go Lauren, then Rosemary, but let's just all stay up. Okay, it's all good. Lauren and Rosemary presented together. And so we'll start with Lauren. Lauren McDowell Pyle. She works with me at PBS North Carolina. And then we'll head over to Rosemary Miller, who works at PBS SoCal, who presented together on the same session. But Lauren, you've heard me going on and on about how much I learned at South by for a year. And then you got a chance to go to the EDU part of it. How does what Greg said track with your experiences?
Yeah, thanks, David, and thanks to Greg. It's interesting. The human intelligence was very evident in my journey through EDU, I would say. I'll keep it specific to there was one session that just kept coming back up, and I saw this in various sessions throughout, but it was reiterated that both in the classroom and in public media, we have an opportunity to be reminded to center the learner. I heard in EdTech for every learner, it was a breakout session, similar setup like Rosemary's and myself, but we were able to hear directly from young scholars who are driving innovation. And so I was reminded, and I want to remind everyone in the call that student voice should be the cornerstone of our work. And they brought up a great point that in the midst of all of these advancements that are incredible, and I'm excited to see where my child, what planet she'll be able to visit one day, there's still just a lot of barriers for learners. And so these 4 students passionately said, changing this trajectory is possible. But it takes bold innovators, and those bold innovators were those students. They are change makers that shared in that session about their struggles, kind of like you and Greg were mentioning. They were super vulnerable and excited to share how their curiosity led them through different innovations, exploration with AI, and the failures. And it was so beautiful to hear this senior in high school, this freshman in college say, like, I failed. And so I was reminded over and over in the other sessions as well, that when we listen to the learners in our own communities, we can better reach those intended outcomes that we're so passionate about. The reason why we're on this call today, we can listen. And so I'll drop in the chat 2 sessions that I'm so glad that Greg put that list together, like you said, David.
Yeah.
But there was
I think
one
Amber already dropped in EdTech for every learner, so it's a great start.
Beautiful, so fast. But that was the one I wanted to share, David.
Oh, good. Thank you. Yeah, y'all check that out. Also, I just got a note that my mic may have been loud. I don't know if I'm blowing out people's speakers or very loud. I'm sorry. It's hard to modulate that here, but let us know in the main chat if there's any audio issues with any of the speakers or presenters. And also, one of the panelists I see, or one of the guests rather, has a hand raised. I'm not sure if that's accident or not, but I think the way this is set up for this webinar, it's best if you could just ask that in the chat instead. I don't think we have the ability to call on to highlight someone else because you're either attendees or panelists. So if you have a question and you're an attendee, just please drop it in the chat. And if you just want to send it to us privately as hosts, you can do that as well. But I encourage everyone to use the chat for the everyone feature. Okay, Lauren, I want to come back to you.
Yeah.
But first, I want to bring Rosemary into the conversation. Rosemary had, well, first of all, Rosemary, thank you for being here. I got the pleasure of working with Rosemary when she helped us do an incredible event in SoCal at the Science Center in LA for an RTL event that we did. Jamming on the Job was there, and really was blown away by Rosemary and her ability to sort of bring communities together at this incredible event. It was a lot of fun. And then you got a chance to go to South by. You had some travel issues, so you didn't get a chance to see as many of the other sessions as maybe you would have liked. But tell us a little bit about the session that you were a part of and why you decided that it was worth your while to fly halfway across the country to present with your other RTL stations on this topic at South by this year?
Yeah, so I had the opportunity to co-present with CPB, Austin PBS, and Lauren, PBS North Carolina, about partnering with statewide agencies to build awareness of ready-to-learn resources. So I specifically shared about a partnership we developed at PBS SoCal with California State Library and their Lunch at the Library program. And listening to Greg, it really does align with some of the themes that he brought up around curiosity and tiny experiments. And so we dove deeper into that during the session.
That's great. And I asked you when we talked about this session if like people were surprised to see you there. Like, what's PBS doing here? I thought this was like a cool conference with innovative people doing crazy cool technology things. And it's like, no, that's us. We belong here. What were some reactions to your session and people that you ran into there?
Yeah, I mean, our session, I would estimate had about 50 people in it, really from a variety of sectors across education. I think that's the beautiful thing about South by is it brings together people from EdTech, from the classroom, from policy, from foundation philanthropy. So we had all of those represented, and we heard several times, I had no idea PBS did this, and I could see this working in my state or in my community, and can we talk more? And I think that's the nice thing about the three of us who were presenting such a variety of different ways Ready to Learn could be implemented statewide. There was no one size fits all model. And I feel like that really spoke to the innovation that's at the heart of South by.
Yeah, that's awesome. And what about you, Lauren? What were your impressions of some of the other attendees that you ran into and met? Were they all working in public sector? Were they private sector? Were they congregated in one geographical location? Tell us about some of the different types of people that you ran into and conversations you had with them.
So diverse, David. There were two teachers I ended up having lunch with one day from Oregon. And so it was cool to really dive in and hear about their world as science educators. There were private sector individuals, and I was amazed also the attendance of public media individuals alongside Rosemary and myself. So it was really a mixture, David.
And then I know that you had flagged for me one session that you were going to have a follow-up conversation with those folks about the puppets, right?
Yeah, so Kickaboo, it was a puppet session all around meeting learners exactly where they are, connected with their management team immediately after the session. We met yesterday virtually, and they said, we had no idea that this could unlock a conversation like this. This was their first time at South by also. They had hoped to reach educators, and they said this is even better. And so we're looking at how we can get their content around STEM using puppets in front of North Carolina learners.
That's awesome. And this is an open question for Rosemary and Lauren. How are you going to, well, I mean, I guess Rosemary, since you only got to do your one session, it may not be as applicable, but if it is, feel free to jump in. But Lauren, I know that you went with another colleague, Jewel. So how are you planning to share out at the station some of the lessons that you've learned and inspiration that you took away? And I'm asking this because the goal is that, you know, everyone that goes, I feel like has a responsibility to come back to the station and share out some of those lessons, some of those sessions. That's what we're doing here. And then I think that, you know, I know Amber's doing it in Wisconsin, Chad's going to do it in Nebraska. What are you specifically doing in your department, do you think, or do you hope to do to make sure to share this knowledge and pass it forward?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we have a meeting on the books, David, for us to look at how we're going to share that out. And so it's good. I'm glad that you were able to follow a different track as I was in EDU so that we can lean in and see how we're going to share. Immediately along the process with my immediate team, David, we were just sending out resources. Jewel and I both were just real time sending teams messages of incredible resources and tools and carrying that forward. And then just sitting down and sharing out kind of like we are right now. I'm looking forward to it.
That's great. Yeah. So I think Lauren's referencing that at North Carolina, we were able to send two people from education, and then Isaac Klein and myself from our Media Innovation Lab, and then Sid and Allison from our marketing communications team. So we had 6 people there, which was great and covered a lot of ground. So we're getting together next week to map out best ways to share and have conversations. I think what we're going to do is to do something that Chad did which is sort of screen different sessions. And so maybe not the whole hour-long session, but portions of it. And so have like 15-minute screenings and then conversation happen from there, and to plan out a few of those. And if any of you are inspired by any of the sessions that we highlighted today through Greg's list or through the list that Amber has provided, that might be an opportunity for you to share and have conversations at your station as well. Okay, along those lines, I want to flag a couple things that I have asked around to Isaac and to Amber and to myself about. I asked myself that I thought were sort of noteworthy sessions as well. So for a few minutes, I just want to talk about that. Number one, there's a lot, and this has to do with education as well as the general audience, a lot of conversation about games, not just for young learners, but for grown learners as well. And I think Amber, I've never seen her more excited than when she left a session about gamers over 50. She's like, what are we doing? Why are we not reaching them? Look at, they're all gamers. They all play Wordle. They all play Candy Crush. This is such a ripe opportunity for us to create a public media game for that older audience. So be on the lookout for more information about that. So gaming for older generations was a huge takeaway. Yes, thank you. Gaming without age limits. And I know that we do such a good job, at least at PBS, with games for younger audiences, but we might as well sort of parlay that into an older general audience as well. Something that one of the big takeaways from that session that Amber shared with me that I heard them talking about was that a lot of games for younger audiences or younger adults tend to reward people that have quick reaction times or something like that, and they're not built to reward people with knowledge about what happened in the 50s, 60s, 70s, does not play to the strengths of like an older generation as much. So we have a huge opportunity to create games for an older audience that plays to their strengths. So we're super jazzed about that. And I think there's some lessons from EDU and from the games for younger kids that we can take and sort of infuse that into a general audience approach. That's one session. I talked about uncertainty. Y'all, that was such a great sort of just gut check about we don't know everything, and the way to learn is by embracing uncertainty and embracing new ideas. So that session was flagged in the chat earlier, and we also put it on our list, but really check that out. That was awesome. And then that was one of Chad's favorites as well as one of mine. And then I asked Isaac, who was with me, to flag one of his sessions, and he came up with, what was the name of the session? Interactive, okay, we'll put it up there. But it was about the convergence of XR and theater experiences and how there are, yes, immersive theater meets gaming video game. Thank you. There was so much talk about the theater kids taking over at Interactive. We have come of an age now where people with a background in theater are either backing into tech or barreling through into tech. I don't know which way they're getting there, but there is a confluence of theater people in tech right now that is really making experiences so much more engaging and so much more responsive to audiences in ways that really pulls from the best of practices of in real life theater into tech. And this session started with that, and then so many other sessions had to do with that. So if you've got people at your stations with a background in theater, share this link with them, have a conversation with them, and see what you can do at your station that embraces some of those strategies about welcoming people in an immersive, interactive environment, either in real life or through tech. And that was just a real big theme that sort of seemed to thread through a lot of parts of interactive. And I think it really starts in the classroom, is like theater, if you will, and then stitched all the way through the rest of interactive. So 3 highlights from us on the interactive side. I wanted to make sure to sneak that in. Isaac says he's happy to have follow-up conversations. Yes, jazz hands, everybody. So check those out, if you will. Amber's been doing a great job updating the chat with lists of resources for some of the sessions that were referenced here, as well as some other sessions that we've sort of surfaced up that we think were a really good part of our experiences. But that's by no means totally exhaustive. There were so many concurrent sessions. Feel free to explore the South by app or the South by website and just search for things that are interesting. They list them all by track, so definitely have at it. Okay, we're almost at time. I want to just do a few things, housekeeping. The third Thursday continues next month when we're going to have another session, and this one's going to be on AI and journalism. And so if you would like to register for that, there's the link. Thank you, Amber. That's going to be a really great news you can use type of session. So we try to go between like general conversations like this and then more practical news and tools. That's going to fall into the latter. That's April 17th. If you haven't registered and you'd like to be a part of that, please do. If you are not already subscribed to Chad's newsletter, please do that as well. That is like must read. Every other week they come out and just sort of lists up some of the cool articles that are happening with AI and technology and innovation within the public media, within the private sector, and then as it relates to public media. So definitely familiarize yourself with that. And with that, we are almost at time right here. So I just want to say thank you once again to Rosemary, to Lauren, to Greg for joining us, to Amber for handling all the chat and the links. If anyone has any questions about our experience or would like us to sort of present or talk to you or people at your station about any of the topics that we have discussed, we are always happy to do that. We tried to cover a lot of ground here. Hopefully it was something for everyone, but if there's something you'd like us to dial in on, we are always happy to do that. And I thank you all for joining us on this day, on this March Madness day, and you can go back and watch some basketball now for the rest of the day.